You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your Amac podcast, Better for America. Today, we are so grateful to have with us a real leader, a moral, political, cultural, and thought leader on issues affecting women, children, and the nation's future. One of the topics that we will be discussing today is the topic of abortion. We understand that things are changing in America. The culture of America has been changing. More and more people are realizing today that life does begin in the womb, and science is showing us more and more just how far along a little fetus is coming in those very early weeks of development. We know that at 15 weeks, for example, that babies have fingers and toes, and that their brain is developing and their heartbeat is beating. And so as I speak with our guest today, it really is something that as a leader of AMAC, this issue of life, of the sanctity of life and protecting life at all stages, from conception to natural death, is so near and dear to my heart. Now, for many people listening, and I do get sort of choked up when I talk about the topic, because I want those who are listening to understand that people, in my view, people are not evil, but people's actions certainly can be evil. And I'm reminded that we have a wonderful, loving God, a powerful, powerful God. And that God is a God of mercy and a God of grace, and a God who understands the heart of a woman who may have had to make that choice and had an abortion at some point in their life. When I was a young girl, about 15, probably younger, maybe 11 or 12 years old, I spent a great deal of time with my grandmother. Her name was Marge. She's no longer with us today, and just thinking about her really, really makes me tear up because of her amazing grace, her love for life, and her love for people. And as a young girl at 12 years old, my grandmother had said to me, "Rebecca, I want to show you something." And she had a pamphlet, and she showed me this pamphlet, and I was born in 1970, so this was probably around 1981, 82, and things were different back then. We didn't have computers. We didn't have access to the kinds of information on demand that we have today. Very easy to go onto your computer and, Google whatever it is that you want to find out. Back then, you had to go to the library, of course. All of you, many of you anyway, listening, remember those days. And so the information that she shared with me was very, very new to me. I was not aware that women could go see a doctor and have the life of their baby terminated. And so when she showed me this pamphlet, it really stirred something very deep inside of me. Inside the pamphlet were pictures of aborted babies, real pictures. These pictures showed heaps of aborted fetuses that were bagged and loaded up in bins, and those bins were put on trucks and they were discarded. And my grandmother went on to explain to me the importance of life, the sanctity of life, and the meaning of life. My grandmother later told me, and this is difficult for me to share. My grandmother later told me that when her husband, my grandfather, was off to war, fighting in World War II, she was afraid. She had a young toddler or infant at the time, my mother. And my grandfather had come home for a very short leave when my mother was just an infant. And my grandfather returned back to Europe, and my grandmother was alone with her mother and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law. And weeks later, perhaps even months later, my grandmother, recognizing that she was pregnant, was so fearful. She didn't know if she would have a husband who would return home to her. She didn't know if she could afford to take care of my mother. And there was so much fear during that time. Remember that back in the 40s, there were no cell phones, there was no internet, and often letters took weeks, months to reach one another. My grandmother was afraid, and she had a friend. And she told her friend, "I'm afraid. I have this baby coming that I cannot take care of. I fear, and I don't know what to do." And this is how I remember my grandmother telling me this story. And this came much, much later, folks. She told me this story when I was in my 30s. And so my grandmother met her friend who had a doctor who said, "We can help you. We can take care of you." I think that for many, many people listening, it's hard to think about abortion when so many women have suffered through abortion. It is, my heart breaks for those that have been in that position. And I do not think that we should be a nation that condemns women who have made that choice. I think we ought to be a nation that uplifts those women, that embraces those women, and that shows the same kind of love and mercy and grace that how lucky that we have for free because we believe in the blood of Jesus Christ. I want to read to you all a couple of verses from the Bible that I think will be very inspiring to you as they were for me, because you see, my grandmother, she taught me these verses. I apologize. The first, folks, share this with your family members, your children especially. In the Bible, "You are the one who created my innermost parts. You knit me together while I was still in my mother's womb." Psalm 139. That is so powerful, folks. Tell your girls, tell your sons, tell your daughters that the Bible teaches us that God is the one who created your innermost parts. He knit you together while you are in your mother's womb. Oh boy. Sorry, I'm getting all upset here.
Keep going, you're good.
Thank you. This is hard for me to do, folks, because I can almost feel the pain and the sadness that must fill so many women's hearts. Because perhaps you knew not what you did, or you did what you needed to do. And if you've never had an abortion, you probably know someone who has had an abortion. And so give that friend a hug. You know, there's an inner voice, I think, that speaks to us. And for many who have had to have an abortion, it's easier to ignore that inner voice. So much easier to ignore that inner voice. Because it's painful. It's painful. But we have a God who loves us, and a God who forgives us, and a God who is merciful. And I thank God for my grandmother, because this is a woman who went on to volunteer. She volunteered up until she was 90 years old at a care center where she counseled women and taught them about that growing baby inside of their womb. She used no words of condemnation. She just used words of life, of giving, and of meaning. There is hope out there, folks. And so if we can teach our daughters and we can teach our sons, it is our job as parents and grandparents to educate our youth. The science teaches us so much more than we knew in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. We know more today than we have ever known before. A few more verses that I'd like to share with you. And please, I do this so that you may share this with your friends and family alike. So then, if anyone is in Christ, that person is part of a new creation. The old things have gone away, and look, new things have arrived. 2 Corinthians verses 5 through 17. I'll read that again. So then, if anyone is in Christ, that person is part of a new creation. The old things have gone away, and look, new things have arrived. So, in closing to my introduction, before I bring on my fabulous guest, folks, I do want to say to you that we live in a nation of hope and a nation of ideals, and those ideals are that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are inalienable rights afforded to all who believe in our Creator. And what a wonderful, wonderful thing that our founding fathers had the foresight and the wisdom to recognize that that is what sets our nation free, is our rights that are God-given. That is really what freedom is all about. So folks, I want to say don't go anywhere. Coming right now is this marvelous guest. I'm excited to introduce her. She's got a lot to share with you. And thank you for tuning in today to Amac's podcast, Better for America. Now, let me formally introduce our guest today, Penny Young Nance. Penny is a leader who has stepped up to help guide this nation and to empower women, protect children, and assure that the unborn across this nation have a voice. She is someone who has earned the trust and gratitude of millions, including President Trump, for her leadership. Penny is presently the CEO and president of Concerned Women for America, or CWA, and is a respected national authority on cultural, children's, and women's issues. Notably, CWA is America's largest public policy women's organization, with more than 500,000 participating members, as well as over 300 prayer and action chapters, hundreds of trained leaders coast to coast. But perhaps most remarkably, our guest was voted one of the top 4 most powerful pro-life female voices in the country by the Christian Post, as well as one of the 100 most influential evangelicals in America, according to Newsmax. Penny Young Nance is a constant commentator and has been on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, C-SPAN, MSNBC, and CNN. And she is telling it like it is, helping inform, offering vital insights, and again, moral leadership. Last, I must mention that she served on President Trump's Life Advisory Council and was blessed to be a regular White House visitor and a trusted friend of the Trump-Pence White House. She has long been a protector of children, including in a prior life with the FCC. I'd like for us to welcome a voice of truth in these difficult times, Penny Young Nance. Penny, what a pleasure to have you here with us again, and welcome.
Well, thank you. That was such a nice introduction. I really appreciate it. It has been a deep honor to get to serve as the voice, really, for conservative women. I am a preacher's kid from Appalachia. I came to Washington as a kid to work on Capitol Hill with no money, no prospects, no connections. And we live in a great country where, hard work and God's help, we're able to, rub shoulders with, the most powerful men and women in the nation. And I just am incredibly grateful to get to serve as that voice for Concerned Women for America members and other women of faith.
We are so thankful to you, as are our over 2 million members. Penny, you have done so much. You have been a leader in so many ways, and your moral leadership is so vital right now, especially as we see so much happening across the country. We need to stand up, and we need greater numbers to defend life, to protect the unborn. So if you could help us see where you think we are as far as the timeline for ending abortion in the national effort to protect the innocent children we lose every year. I think we may be at a turning point where the Supreme Court, again, legally steps in and reasserts the real meaning of the Constitution, and that is protecting life, declaring what many know, that the U.S. Constitution has never included a constitutional right to abort a child. Do you think we could finally see the long-awaited reversal of Roe v. Wade?
Well, I appreciate being asked about that. And I just think AMAC members are so well served by your understanding that if we're going to protect life at the end of life, we've got to recognize the ethic of life, right? We've got to protect life from conception to natural death. And that means from all different stages. That means whether you're a baby in the womb or whether you're an older person who needs heart surgery and the government is saying no, or your insurance company is saying no, you can't have that because you're 80, right? And so understanding an ethic of life is an underpinning principle. It is a basic understanding of human rights. And I just, congratulations to AMAC for recognizing and having leadership that recognizes how it all fits together. And you are right. We are at a turning point in our nation, and it's been a long time coming. I mean, you remember in 1973, the court was looking at incomplete or bad information about fetal development, about human life. There was no sonogram. We were using rotary phones, by the way. Medical science was so far behind where we are now. Now, some of your members may have seen their grandchildren or remember even their own children's sonogram. Now we have 3D and even 4D sonograms where it is almost a real picture into the womb. The days of the grainy pictures over. We can see that a little baby heart is beating as early as 6 weeks. We can see it. We know that, like in the case in Mississippi, that the Mississippi case that's coming before the Supreme Court on December 1st, it's the Dobbs versus Jackson Whole Women's Health case, is about at 15 weeks gestation, well into the second trimester, whether or not a baby who has a beating heart, has all of her organs, has brain waves, has hands and feet, has eyes, nose, and mouth, whether or not she deserves constitutional legal protection. That's the question. The question is whether or not a state, in this case Mississippi, can prohibit abortion after 15 weeks. Now, this goes directly against Roe, who set up this sort of fake trimester system and just said, we don't want you to do it in the late trimesters. But then that's not even the real thing, because you had Doe v. Bolton. I'm getting in the weeds here a little bit, but
this is good. This is good. We need to know this. Yeah.
Doe versus Bolton came down at the same time as a companion case that defined exceptions to that rule for Roe under health exceptions, and defined health exceptions as pretty much anything: financial, familial, emotional. That left this huge loophole. So late-term abortions have happened since Roe v. Wade. Even after we've known, states have known about fetal development and know that this is clearly a human being. Even after the case that now we have babies surviving at as early as like 21 weeks. Even after that, there's been abortions. The left has chosen to take this position of abortion should be legal anytime, any reason, any number, all paid for by the taxpayer, right? This is their position. They are completely out of step with public opinion now. Public opinion has grown. We have come so far because science caught up with the lie of abortion. And so I am so excited and would urge your members to come join us on December 1st as we stand outside the chamber of the Supreme Court. We stand on on the steps and simply pray. And you probably met her or will meet her. Lynn Fitch, who's the Attorney General, this beautiful woman, Attorney General from Mississippi, will be inside arguing the case on December 1st. And I've committed to her that women of faith will be on the outside praying for her. So I would urge AMAC members to join us. Come to concernwomen.org. Maybe you all want to launch your own effort to come join us, because
we would be honored. Yeah, we would be honored, Penny. I would love to be there with you. So I've got my folks going to go check my calendar. Personally would like to be there. We will put out a call to action inviting AMAC members to who would like to pray. It is so important, and prayer is powerful. Penny, your words, they echo. And for myself, I am so genuinely hopeful that regardless of the leftward tilt of the national, our national leadership today, that we're seeing a rise in public awareness around abortion and the importance of America as a moral nation getting this right. Now, that said, we seem to be in a worrisome time. Not just abortion. We see Democrat-controlled states, Democrat governors and legislatures, including right here in New York, where I'm from, and in Virginia, passing morally repugnant late-term and near-birth abortion laws, while other states are becoming resolute in protecting life. States like Texas with their human heartbeat law. Aside from law, where do you think our culture is headed? Beyond questions of constitutionality, do you think as a culture, and I think you've said it, that we are turning the corner, that we are beginning to think in moral terms again, realizing that life is sacred?
Yes. Well, and let me just say, you're 100% right. You're seeing this like sort of scurrying by the left because they see what I see. I think we're going to win. I think the Supreme Court is going to uphold the Dobbs case. And then suddenly it will be, and what happens when that happens, so people understand, it's not like abortion immediately becomes illegal in the nation. That's not what happens. What happens is it throws it, because they want to tell you that's what happens.
That's right.
But it's not. They throw it back to the states. It goes back to, it's a reset for pre-Roe, right? And before Roe, each state got to decide for itself and kind of worked it out among their citizens. And the legislatures got to decide. When you put it closer to the people, we win. When it's judicial fiat by 9 men in 1973, we lose. Now we have on the court Amy Coney Barrett, who has 7 children, who actually recognizes life. And by the way, I know you all joined us in working to get Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. That's right. This is showtime. This is why that happened. This is why we all work so hard, because we now have constitutionalists who can look at the Constitution and recognize the reality that Roe and the Casey decisions are not in line with the Constitution. The states should be able to decide. So then that means that all of us pro-life activists have to turn then and fight it out in the states and work to bring other people to our side. So like you said, New York has already started by having very liberal abortion laws up until birth. And, California and New Jersey and, different states in the Northeast have very, very liberal laws, whereas states like Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas and Kentucky, Tennessee, those tend to be much more conservative states. We're already winning the argument there. We've got to go turn and convince other people to come to our side. And we are eager to do that. We believe that when the free marketplace of ideas, we win. We have 100 Young Women for America chapters around the country. They are excited to be evangelists for their position on their college campuses around the country. But we have to do that. The other piece of the puzzle, and I think this might have been what you were getting to as well, is since 1973, the pro-life movement has grown up. I am so grateful for where we are today. I think we, started out, and this is before my time and your time, but some of your members may remember, those early pregnancy care center, we call them crisis pregnancy centers, where maybe you just had a sweet, loving Catholic mom there to give counseling with a model of fetal development. That's all the resources she had, and maybe a pregnancy test. Today, there's over 4,000 pregnancy care centers, independent ones. These are the ones that don't get government money, that are independent, that are privately funded, that are staffed by loving volunteers, many of whom are my members, perhaps your members too, that give health care, give free health care, give government, give what connect for government services, but also give them job training and clothing and help take care of their baby after the baby comes, and helps them in the issue of education, helps them to stand on their own, gives them life counseling, because sometimes you need a mentor to go through and walk through these hard situations in life. In fact, often you do. And even as much as even bringing these women into our homes. So the pro-life movement is ready, willing, and able to step in. There's thousands, and I used to know the number, of community health centers that actually are what the Trump administration worked to empower instead of Planned Parenthood. Because when a woman walks into those doors, the whole woman is cared for. It's not just about, in fact, they don't do abortions, but they help her with a number of range of real reproductive care. That when they say reproductive care, they mean abortion. We mean actually
That's right.
Reproductive care.
We mean
and
care.
So there's much being done. There's much more that can be done. The Biden administration, you may have seen this week, changed the rules. So now Planned Parenthood is awash with our government money. And when that happens, we know abortions increase, because that's the solution to any problem that they have. They tell these women that they are incapable of caring, that their life will end if they don't have this abortion, and don't even bother to point out all the other solutions, all the other opportunity. We want to come alongside and do the long haul work and walk with these women so that they can make good decisions, so their soul isn't burdened with taking another human life.
Well, thank you so much for that. And what I would love to do is get those resources on our website. So I'd love for my team to have access to those 400 care centers so that we at least can direct them. Just a simple redirect link would be wonderful. Mm-hmm. Our over 2 million members are just loving people, many of whom are grandparents. They have grandchildren. They want to educate their grandkids. Mm-hmm. And they're just really looking for those resources, at least to share those resources. So thank you for that. This is so meaningful from so many perspectives. And again, it really does underscore why having you in the arena is so important. I do want to widen the lens a little bit. I want to talk about some other moral issues affecting women. On the one hand, we are seeing more Republican and conservative women in Congress cycle after cycle, which is very encouraging, and in state government. But on the other hand, we have a rising tide of social division, dysfunctionality, and a lot of contradiction. One issue that comes to my mind is the way in which we are allowing men and boys who identify as women or girls to compete in female sports. And this just seems very wrong to me. I want to ask you, have you thought much about this issue, and how do you see this issue playing out? Where do you think that this is headed across the nation?
Oh, yes. Concerned Women for America has been front and center on this, because this is about protecting women, right? And we recognize that God created us uniquely. He created us with dignity. And we're not going to let other people take that away from us. It's like stolen valor, right? You can't just suddenly put on a dress and become a woman. You haven't walked in our shoes. You don't know what we've been through. You don't know what our life experience is. And I just think this is so funny. A few years ago, after, remember Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn Jenner, and Cosmopolitan magazine chose him as Woman of the Year. And I was like, well, wait a minute. We can argue about whether he's a woman or not, but even if we concede that point, which I'm not, but if we concede that point, he's only been one for 10 minutes. What about all the women who have done the miraculous work, all the years that we have spent, all the things that we've been through individually? We all have our own stories, frankly. I mean, the Me Too movement happened for a reason. There are real issues that women have had to live through in the workforce, around the country. So don't take that away from us. And then the other side of it is, what about our daughters, right? So you have these young women who are competing in sports, they're competing in athletics, they're hoping for college scholarships. My staff just did a back of the envelope calculation on, the millions of dollars that women lose in scholarships if just 5% of trophies in high school go to men. And so we're in this battle with NCAA because they want to recognize anyone. We've got the Olympics coming up. And moms around the country are saying, wait a minute, my daughter cannot win physiologically and biologically. Men are stronger. They're predisposed to winning. You might have that one sort of outlier, but that's not the case. That's not the case when it comes to, track and tennis and other, especially individual sports. You have the Selena Sol case, who is a women's high school track star who lost her trophies to men in the state of Connecticut because they started recognizing men. There's a lawsuit right now that's happening. They've lost and they're having to appeal. I think that's going to be in front of the Supreme Court. So yes, Concerned Women for America is fighting for the dignity and uniqueness of American women. The other issue, and you may not be aware of this, Republicans joined Democrats to allow for the National Defense Authorization Act to include in the draft and signing up for selective service women for the first time. So if we trigger the draft, there won't be a time to have any kind of question about which men or women get conscripted and sent to the front lines. So you have to, it's a bigger sort of woke conversation. We're hearing a lot about CRT, right?
Yes.
This is gender theory. It's the same kind of school of woke thought that's permeating our culture, sort of behind the scenes, throughout the university system, with the whole pronoun battle, like, forcing teachers to recognize a student's preferred pronoun, calling a girl a boy or a boy a girl because that's what they prefer. You have to deny biology. We're fighting on the rights of teachers to be able to live out their faith and not to have to deny reality. And so there is a lot happening on that. You open a whole can of worms. We could have a whole nother show just on that subject.
That's right. Penny,
the NDAA is not done. Let me just tell you that. But any of your viewers that feel compelled, they should reach out, because Republicans that you would not expect are not with you on this. They're just sort of shrugging their shoulders like we need to pass the bill. The bill is bad for women. It would actually put women in frontline combat against their will if the draft is triggered. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Penny. You are such a forward-leaning voice, and you're definitely a force for coordinated action. I do know that you've got to run. You don't have much time for us today, and we will certainly have you back. I do want to ask you to just take a moment and tell our audience how to get involved in Concerned Women for America, how your group is organized, where you focused your highest energy, whether you see younger women playing a role in preserving the nation's moral fiber. I certainly do. Yes. But if you could go ahead and share that with us before you leave us today.
We are just a real, honest to goodness, grassroots Christian women's organization. We've been around over 40 years. We were started by a woman named Dr. Beverly LaHaye, and that name may be familiar to some of your members. She's actually 92 now, and great, a force to be reckoned with, somebody I draw on experience from all the time. But we have chapters around the country. We have a new program called Influencers. In the age of COVID, people don't necessarily get together for coffee and have meetings, but you can make a difference from your laptop. You can sit in your home at your desktop and influence your nation for good. So we're asking people to come join us at concernedwomen.org. Sign up to be an influencer, sign up to join or start a chapter. And then, yes, you're right. I am so grateful. It is so encouraging to see this next generation of conservative pro-life women. We're training them to lead, and they're stepping forward. We were just in Tampa, Florida, with 100 of our leaders, and Governor DeSantis came, and there's a picture. I don't know if any of your members are on Instagram, but follow me on Instagram. You can see my young women praying over the governor. They are just incredibly genuine, bold, smart, beautiful women. And when I'm with them, I feel like it's going to be okay. The nation's going to move forward. We're going to be in good hands, but we've got to build into them. The other side has done it for generations. They've had these women's studies programs that are leftist and horrible all over the nation in schools and funded at billions of dollars. We've got to do a better job than they're doing. We're scrappy and we're grassroots, but we're doing the hard work of training these women, biblical worldview, constitutional principles, free market principles. They understand the way the world works. They understand our nation. They understand the underpinnings, and they understand God's word. So I'm very excited about that group.
Wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, Penny. Your leadership is certainly genuine. It's uplifting in such troubling times when the pressure is on all of us. And your voice is so valuable. So thank you for being there so consistently and with such determination. From your time at the FCC to working with President Trump, you have really made a difference, and we hope to have you back with us again soon. And to all of you listening out there, thank you for tuning in today. If you have not downloaded the Amac News app, you can watch and listen to today's podcast, plus track breaking news right there on the Amac News app. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow, like, and share wherever you are on social media. Until next time, I am Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here, and God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.